What does that mean? Now, Samuel was also up here speaking about coherence between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Well, that's not coherent. Abraham said, it was said to Abraham quite clearly, your children will be circumcised. Jesus himself was circumcised. Why is it changing in the New Testament? You may have a theological reason for that, and that's open for you. But it also says, other things in the Old Testament, like God is not a man that he should change his mind. And that doesn't leave the door open for him to be a God-man either. That's just an exercise in semantics. It also says quite clearly that, yes, it certainly says in the Hebrew that God created humanity in his image. And it says quite clearly in the Qur'an that God breathed his spirit into Adam, and also into Jesus as well, for Jesus to be created. Okay? This is essentially what it's referring to, and I'd argue that from a theological standpoint, and this isn't really for me to do tonight, but from a theological standpoint, there's very little difference, unless you want to say God has hands and feet like us, there's very little difference between what we say and what you understand, because for us, the very Spirit of God that we all have in us to some degree is that image. Okay, it's what differentiates us from the dogs and the cats outside, if that makes sense. Now, I've also spoken very briefly about the canon of the Old Testament. I'll just let Samuel know, perhaps he doesn't, that there was a Sanhedrin, or a Jewish council in the first Christian century that determined what the Hebrew canon would be. That was defined reasonably early on. The Christian canon, however, wasn't collected until about 350. And even then it was fluid for a long time afterwards. Okay, so some of our earliest and best complete New Testament manuscripts have books that some of you have probably not even heard of, like the Shepherd of Hermas. Okay? I'd be very interested to see how many Christians here have actually read that. That was considered canon for about 1,000 years, and then considered not to be canon. Okay? Martin Luther himself said that Revelation should not be considered part of the canon. Martin Luther. Okay, now obviously you being majority Anglicans, I assume here, or at least majority Protestants, will respect him to some degree. He said that Revelation is not part of the canon. In fact, John Calvin also did not write a commentary on Revelation. It was the only book he didn't write a commentary on. So, really question, what are you talking about in terms of canon? Now, as I said, our story is that the Qur'an was well and truly canonised before the time of Uthman. And the Sana'a manuscripts give the evidence of that. So far, there's been not a single scholar that said there are differences, like Samuel said, in the Sana'a manuscripts, and I genuinely look forward to any individual that proposes that. They are available on the UN website, as I said, and I'll be more than happy to give that website to anybody later on this evening. Thank you very much.